Now we're going to turn to looking at some study updates. I gave you some updates as I talked about the state of the network, but Brian Leroux, who's the director of the Coordinating Center, will now talk about some of the ongoing studies and where things stand. So I'll turn it over to Brian then.
Okay, thanks, Tim. So I'm going to provide a little extra detail to the updates that Tim talked about earlier this morning. So I just want to reiterate that it's been mentioned by Don and by Tim that it's been a great year for Precedent. We've made an awful lot of progress. I think we can everyone in this room has contributed to that, Precedent staff and of course all the members and your office staff as well. So we've really accomplished a lot in the last year. I just want to mention a few things. We've completed a data collection on 4 additional studies, so now there are 5 studies for which we've completed data collection, and we've launched 5 new clinical studies in the last year, so that's a very big accomplishment. And we've had 3 additional studies approved by the Protocol Review Committee, which will be coming out and being implemented soon. So in addition, there have been over 600 surveys completed by you all. We're getting really good response to our survey studies. There have been over 1,500 patients enrolled in various clinical studies over the last year, and well over 100 assistance and monitoring visits that the regional coordinators conduct in your offices. So an awful lot of activity. So we all should feel very good about what we're accomplishing. So I just want to give a little bit more detail on the status of the studies and mention some of the lessons learned from them. So the first study that we did was a patient survey, and we did quite well. We achieved 97% of our target of 2,000 patients on this. And this study really was designed to test out the idea of practice-based research. So we wanted to see how practice-based research was going to work. And it was also to give you, all the members, a chance to try it out in your office to see how it worked. So we picked a study that was not too complicated, such as a randomized clinical trial, something involving seeing patients and recording data, but not say randomizing them to different treatments and so on. So this study certainly achieved its purpose. We did learn a lot from it. As I reported to you last year, we did uncover some issues with documentation of informed consent in particular, and we had to revise our strategies considerably. I won't go into the details. For those who were here last year, I think you heard all about that. So there were some issues with people just being new to research, and the idea of getting informed consent from a patient to participate in research was a new thing. It was also a matter of us having very confusing forms to document that informed consent. That certainly contributed to it, and of course one of the solutions was for us to completely revise our forms, and so things have been working much better since then. So it certainly achieved that aim. And also, this study has provided us a nice snapshot of visits to your offices. So I like to think of it as kind of a day in the life of a Precedent member. And so those of you who did participate in Study 1 will have found in your packet a kind of a report card, a series of tables and graphs that show the data from your particular office and how it compares to other offices in your state, as well as all of the offices in Precedent. So I hope you'll find that quite useful. And of course, if you have any questions about how to interpret those graphs and tables and so on, just catch me sometime during the day. Another interesting thing that came out of this, and I see Chuck Speakerman, one of our biostatisticians in the front row, he has been working on a methodological aspect that came out of this. We realized that the patients who come to your office more frequently are more likely to get randomly selected into this study because we're taking a random sample of visits to your office, not a random sample of your charts, but going to your file cabinets and pulling charts. And so what we found, what Chuck's found, is that if you look at, say, the prevalence of caries in the office visits, it's a little bit higher because the patients with caries are kind of overrepresented, because I guess they come to the office more frequently than patients without caries, maybe to get their caries treated. So if you make some adjustments for that, you can get perhaps a better answer if you're trying to assess the prevalence of caries in your patient population as opposed to the prevalence of caries in your office visits. And so Chuck has submitted an abstract to be presented at the Practice-Based Research Network being put on by ARC, the AHRQ association that Don DiNucci mentioned. Okay, so another study that has completed data collection as the osteonecrosis of the jaw study, and actually we had completed this last year, and Philip Pujol had presented the results from our network to you last year. And this year you'll get to see the results from all three networks combined, results that were presented in Washington at the AADR meeting last week. And this one has been a really good learning experience for all three networks to figure out how to work cooperatively to implement a common protocol and then to merge the data and put it all into one data set, because we all use different data capture systems, and so it was quite a challenge to get the data merged and analyzed. So that has been a very important study from that perspective, as well as, of course, the results being important. So then there are three studies also that have been completed. The ones highlighted in blue are actually new studies to this year. Study 7, I guess, had been rolled out in a pilot wave, and we actually talked a little bit about pilot results last year, but it's only launched widely in the last year. And these surveys are all done using a system that Axio Research has set up to do web-based surveys. And it's a good system. It allows us to track who has responded and who hasn't. So if you don't respond right away, you get calls from Mishan or emails or faxes and so on. And with that, over a few months period, we are able to capture at least an 80% response rate, which is considered kind of a standard in the field of survey research. If you don't get 80% response rate, you worry about your results being biased. So we're very happy and appreciative of your efforts to complete those surveys. So study 7 is a survey on treatment of hypersensitivity. And there are actually 2 posters on reporting results on that, which you can check during the poster session. And this is going to be important for planning a future treatment trial on hypersensitivity. Another one is the next 2 actually are Condor studies. Don mentioned the Condor group, which is the name we attach to the 3 networks combined when we work on studies together. So study 10, the Practice Impact Research Group study, is looking at your treatment approaches, philosophies for treating caries and so on, and also asks a lot about where you get information, what journals you read and meetings you attend and so on. So I think you'll find that the results of that quite interesting. Ruth McBride is taking the lead on that for Precedent and is presenting a poster on that this afternoon. And on that one, as well as the TMJD study, the next one on the list, Axio has taken the lead on gathering the data from the other networks and merging it together. So again, it's always a bit of a challenge. It's getting a little easier, but that's still a very challenging job as well. The PERG study you will see again. We'll be implementing it again probably in 2011. The main purpose of the PERG study is to assess change in your practice behaviors and characteristics, and in particular change that might be associated with being involved in practice-based research. So very important that we're going to be administering the PERG survey, and so it's particularly important that you participate in that again. And we'll be looking at things like the participation in, say, a pulp cap trial, maybe influence choice of treatments for pulp caps. Did participation in a caries risk study change your behaviors towards assessing caries risk, and so on. The temporomandibular joint disorder study is the most recently completed one. And again, Axio is merging the data on that. And in this case, we're going to be sending the data to researchers in Minnesota who initiated that study. And they're going to be using it for planning a treatment study on TMJD, I believe. And if you have questions partway through, please just raise your hand or stop me. Okay, so the ongoing studies, as Tim mentioned, we have 7 ongoing clinical studies being conducted, which I think is a lot. It's quite a challenge, and we've been asking you to perhaps consider participating in more than one at a time. And it's really important and that some of you have actually stepped up to that challenge and are conducting more than one of these clinical studies at one time. We don't have enough members quite to do 7 studies at the same time without having some of you participate in more than one of them. So that's been extremely valuable. So the first 2 are studies that we've talked about in past meetings. Study 2 is looking at salivary diagnostic markers for caries risk, and it's been going quite well. We're up to about 1,300 patients, about 2/3 of the way to our goal, and we have about 49 sites who are signed up. We would like to get up to 60, so I would really urge you to consider signing up for this study. We need about 11 more sites. So Catherine Ortblad can help you out with that if you at the break in the morning and the afternoon, and get you signed up. This one has also been producing some results, even though the study's not over. Marilyn Roten has a poster here today on association between toothbrushing and caries that was presented at AADR, and has also submitted an abstract, has published a paper on a reliability study where we looked at the reliability of the salivary diagnostic test results. And I should also mention that another thing we're presenting at the AHRQ PBRN meeting, at least we've submitted an abstract, and that's on the informed consent process that I mentioned. We found both in Study 1 and in Study 2 some difficulties with the informed consent that I mentioned earlier, and Marilyn has led an effort among all 3 of the networks to develop an abstract to present at that PBRN meeting coming up in June. Okay, so the next one is the CARL study on computer-assisted relaxation learning for needle phobia, and it's moving along. It's coming near to an end. It's going to end this summer, at least the enrollment. We're getting there, getting close to the target of 96 patients. This one also you can learn about in the poster session. Lisa Heaton, I believe, is going to be presenting the poster on the challenges with recruiting to a trial like this. So another good lesson learned. So then the other studies are the ones highlighted in blue again are the ones that are new to this year that we've been talking about to you for in the past, but just been launched in the past year. So Study 5 on cracked teeth was just launched last fall. We've already got 32 sites signed up, and we only need 3 more. We wanted to have 35 sites. So if you really want to do the cracked tooth study, you're going to have to let us know real quick and get your name on the list, and you might be able to sneak in. But we're just about there, and we're actually, the numbers on these slides were already about a week or so out of date. We're already up to about almost 350 patients, so about halfway to our goal of 700 patients. This one has been fairly challenging, I think. There's a fairly complex system for for randomly selecting teeth to be assessed for asymptomatic cracks, but that seems to have been working well, although we were a little concerned that might be overly complicated. It seems to have been working well. We're also looking for symptomatic teeth, and those seem to be a little bit harder to find. So it might take us a little longer to get all the symptomatic teeth, but we should reach our targets on this study with no problem. Okay, the next one is the pulp capping trial, where it's a randomized clinical trial comparing mineral trioxide aggregate to calcium hydroxide for direct pulp capping. And this is one that has an interesting design feature. It would be too much to ask you to alternate between using one material and using another on different patients maybe in the same day or in consecutive days. So we're randomizing the offices that participate in this to one material or the other. So some of the design challenges that we faced with that, for instance, it raises the sample size requirement. We presented at the AADR meeting last week, and there's a poster on that that you can look at this afternoon. This one is going a little more slowly than we'd like. We had asked you before doing the study about how many pulp caps you do per month, and we planned our timeline based on that. And it turns out you don't do as many pulp caps as you thought you did, which is maybe a good thing for your patients, but it's a bad thing for us in terms of planning. So we actually submitted an abstract on that finding also to let other researchers know that you have to be careful about how you plan your studies. So the enrollments have been a little slower than we would like. We've had to extend the timeline, but we still think we'll get to our target of 640 patients within about a year. So I hope a year from now I'll be telling you that we're finished enrollment in this trial. And we really, in order to do that, I think we're going to need several more, up to maybe 10 more sites. So if you think you do considerable number of pulp caps, and that would be at least one per month, or if not more, then please see Catherine at the sign-up desk and get signed up for this trial. Okay, so 3 more studies, all ongoing, all have been launched in the past year. A study on third molars, referral for removal of third molars and outcomes of that, which is our study 9, has been going very, very well. We started it last summer, and we've already over 500 patients, about 2/3 of our way to the goal. We need about 5 more sites for this one. So again, if you're interested, let us know real soon, because this one will be closed to new sites in the near future. And there's a poster on this study as well that Greg Huang is presenting. So the next one is a study on temporary anchorage devices, or mini screws done in orthodontic offices. This is another one of those studies that's going a little slower than we would like the pulp caps. It seems like practitioners tend to overestimate the frequency of occurrence of this procedure. I think it's just a matter of human nature that we remember events. We don't remember those long periods of time when we didn't do something. We remember the times we did it, and we tend to overestimate frequencies of things. So anyway, there just aren't as many TADs being used as we had originally estimated. So it's a little slow, but again, I think we will still be able to get useful information from this study. So we're at 47 patients, 21 sites. We originally planned on 40 sites. We need about 19 more. One thing that might save us here is that we have found that each patient typically gets more than one of these devices. So on average, I think about 2. And so if we look at the sample size from that perspective, we may be able to pick up that extra information from the multiple devices per patient. It's a little bit complicated. We have to get some outcome data before we can make accurate calculations on that. Okay, the next one, study 15 on remineralization, a topic you'll be hearing more about later this morning. This one just recently launched. We've already got, and again, this slide says 13. I think it's already considerably higher than that. We have at least 13 offices that are ready to go and start collecting data in this study. And those are all orthodontic offices. We would like to get at least 20 of those, and then we would also like to get 20 general practitioner offices. But the catch is that you have to do at least 50 orthodontic cases per year. So if you're one of those and you are interested in this study, please let us know. We're a little uncertain as to how many of you there are out there, how many GPs there are who actually start 50 cases, orthodontic cases per year or more. So if you do, we really need you for this trial. So it's looking at comparing 3 different treatments for remineralization of white spots after orthodontic treatment. Okay, some of the upcoming studies. We're doing a follow-up to study 2, or I guess an add-on to study 2. This is a study on genetics and caries. We're going to be looking at whether genetic markers add significantly to prediction of caries after accounting for other commonly known risk factors, including the salivary diagnostic tests. So we are hoping to launch that real soon. We actually just earlier this week submitted the IRB application to the UW Human Subjects Office. So if that gets approved quickly, we'll be launching this study fairly soon. And this will be only open to offices that are currently doing study 2 or about to start study 2. Because it will be the patients who are participating in study 2 that will be asked to participate in this study. So if you're interested in doing the genetic study, you'll have to sign up to do study 2. So you can talk to Bob Wyant about the genetic study in the morning break, and then see Catherine in the afternoon break. Talk to Bob to find out about genetics, then see Catherine to sign up for study 2 and 16. Yes? I'm sorry, repeat it?
Question regarding study 15.
Okay.
Are you only limiting that to the officers who start do the orthodontic treatment?
Good question. The question was, are we limiting this to offices that perform the orthodontic treatment, or would it be enough okay to refer for orthodontic treatment? I'm going to, so I don't make the wrong statement, is there, maybe Greg could address that? Yeah, Greg, so for the general practitioners participating in the remineralization study, they have to actually perform the orthodontic treatment on 50 cases per year, or is it just that they refer the patients and then we'll see them back?
Yes. The way that wound up, we originally had wanted to allow general dentists to recruit patients that were treated elsewhere.
Right.
But one of the requirements we have is we have to verify that the white spot lesion occurred during treatment. And so you need to have an initial photograph to refer back to at the time of debanding. And so after several rounds with the PRC, what was finally decided was general dentists can enroll orthodontic patients for the study, but they have to have treated those patients themselves so that they would have the initial records. And on top of that, what we decided was we wanted general dentists who were treating a significant number of orthodontic patients. So the requirement was that you start at least 50 patients each year. And if you did that, then you can enroll patients into this study.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Does that answer your question then? Yeah. Are there other questions? Okay, so moving on then to the other upcoming studies. One that you can learn more about at the break that Tim talked about earlier this morning is a survey on treatment of special needs patients. Originally had been planned to look at treatment of special needs children, but now it's expanded to look at adults as well. And this one is been approved by the PRC, Protocol Review Committee, and is going to the IRB at the UW Human Subjects Office very soon. And so we hope that we'll be able to launch that in April or May, sometime around then. And as Tim mentioned, we really hope to get a good response on this. The questions are of a somewhat sensitive nature. We really want to get a full, complete response and honest responses from you. So, we're going to be careful to de-identify the data. So people who are looking at the responses won't have the link to your names. There will just be one person who will be checking to see whether you've responded or not, to be able to remind you to respond if you haven't. So Kimberly Huggins is going to be available at a break to talk about that study if you're interested in it. Another one is a study on hypersensitivity. This is kind of a companion to our study 7, which was a survey of your attitudes or approaches to treatment of hypersensitivity. And this one's going to look at the prevalence of hypersensitivity, and going to be an important piece of information we'll need to plan a future clinical trial on comparing different treatments for hypersensitivity, which we hope to be able to do in the future sometime. This one, we're delaying a little bit. We want to make sure we maintain the momentum we've got with these 7 ongoing studies, and make sure we're doing a good job on those, and not throw another study into the works and potentially mess things up. So we're going to start a little later than we had originally planned. So summer or fall, perhaps. Only about 30 offices. We think this one will be relatively easier than some of the other studies. It'll happen over a fairly short period of time. We think there's a lot of interest in it, so we're not concerned about completing this one. We're sure we'll get it done. And one other study that's not mentioned on the slide is a study that the orthodontic subnetwork is considering on overbite retention. It had gone to the Protocol Review Committee. Review Committee sent back comments saying you need to reconsider this, and so they're reconsidering the plan for that. So we're not sure what's going to happen on that one. It's not far enough along in the process to know exactly even what design is going to be used. Okay, so I just want to very briefly, I'll try to keep us on schedule, briefly talk a little bit about a different topic, a survey that was conducted in January. So this is a little different. This is a survey not done as a research study per se, not something that we would use in publications, just simply use for information for internal purposes. And but again, we got really good response. We got about 116 responses, all within just about a 3-week period or something like that. So again, we really appreciate your responsiveness to our surveys. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about the follow-up appointments, and Jack will be talking about some of the other topics, the staff enthusiasm and staff recognition as part of the afternoon program. So just a little bit about some ideas we're thinking of for making sure that we get patients back for follow-up visits. So I want to emphasize this is really, really critically important. It does us no good if we enroll 1,900 patients in the caries risk study if we don't get a high proportion of them back within 2 years to find out what their caries experience was. The study really would be completely lost. There would be no useful information gained if we only get half of them back. So it's really vitally important that we get a very high proportion, 80-90% of the patients back at some point, so we see their caries risk, their actual caries experience. So we're thinking about how best to do that, and we had some ideas, and we wanted to get your reactions to them. So one thing, we could have reminder postcards that you all send out to the patients. We could, at the Precedent office, create the postcards and give them to you, and you would just have to send them out. A large number, almost 80 of the 116, thought, yeah, that would be effective. And I just want to point out for that dentist who found that the numbers didn't add up in Tim's slide, you don't be concerned that these numbers add up to more than 100. These aren't percents. Okay, so these are numbers of responses. It looks, the scale 0 to 100, so you might think they're percents and tell me that they add up to more than 100. They're actually numbers of respondents. So about 80 and only about 30 thought, no, that wouldn't be effective. Free exams, this is an idea that we had. If some of the patients, maybe they're not coming back within a 2-year period to see you, maybe it's because they have trouble paying for visits, they don't have insurance. Maybe if you were willing to offer some free exam or something, they would come back. And so there was a little less enthusiasm about that one. But still, a majority of you thought that would be effective. But quite a few thought not. Monetary incentives, so we might send you gift cards or something like that that you would distribute to your patients. People thought that would be quite effective. Then, maybe more importantly, would you actually be willing to try it? The reminder postcards, definitely over almost 90 the respondents thought yes, they would be willing. The free exams, a little less enthusiasm about that, but it's good that 60 respondents thought yes, so something we keep in mind. And the monetary incentives, there was pretty good response to that. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so the comment is perhaps the most useful thing would be is if we reminded you all of who is behind and who hasn't been seen and who's overdue for a recall visit or a follow-up visit. And we are planning to do that definitely and have implemented that in some of the longitudinal studies. So if you're in one of these studies, 2 or 5 or 6 or in particular those, you should be receiving from your coordinator periodic reminders, lists of patients who have or haven't been seen for follow-up visits and need to be seen. Yeah. Okay, are there any other questions on study updates? Okay. So we just want to finish by doing one thing that's a little bit new for this year. We've noticed over the years that there are some offices in which the research really works really well and goes smoothly, and other offices for a wide variety of reasons in which the research just doesn't work very well. And so we really wanted to use this annual meeting to create an environment for you all to share ideas with each other, and for those who have found ways to overcome the obstacles to doing research, to share that information with others. So what we thought we would do is identify some offices who have been doing well and would be willing to come to the annual meeting and participate in panel sessions and breakout sessions to share their experiences. So we came up with a precedent honor roll, and we selected I think there are 26 members who have been very active in precedent in a variety of ways, and in particular have been participating in one of these studies that we have ongoing and been doing particularly well in terms of enrolling patients in a timely manner and entering the data in a timely manner and making sure the data are complete and queries are responded to and so on. And in addition, we're attending the annual meeting and willing to participate in these panel sessions and breakouts. So we wanted to recognize them so that you all can see who they are, and they'll be leading sessions later in the day. So to announce their names, I want to invite our lead coordinator, Marilyn Roten, up to do the announcement. No.
Good morning. The dentists and office staff that we would like to recognize would have found a certificate like this in the registration materials that they received this morning. And the certificate says Northwest Precedent, Certificate of Appreciation presented to dentist and office staff for exceptional contributions to research in the practice-based research collaborative in evidence-based dentistry. So you will have found a certificate like that in your materials. And the dentists who are on this year's Precedent Honor Roll are Dr. Kyle Poppleton, Lauren Anderson, Dr. Jackie Jones, Dr. Michael Claymore, Dr. Kenneth Brossel, Dr. Sandra Bennett, Dr. Felix Marcial, Dr. Evan Johnson, Dr. Janet Peterson, Dr. Walt Manning, Dr. Timothy Lawhorn, Dr. John Staley, Dr. Mark Lambert, Dr. Kelly Faddis, Dr. Douglas Beaudry, Dr. Randall Stevens, Dr. Gerald Weitz, Dr. Rich Radmill, Dr. Don Larson, Dr. Patrick Haggerty, Dr. Philbert Doliak, Dr. David Wilkinson, the Office of Dr. Robert and Thomas Merrill, and the Office of Dr. Blair Struble and David Goebel. And because these dentists serve as a resource to all of you Precedent members, and especially those of you who are new to Precedent, or those of you who are considering participating in one of the studies that they have successfully conducted, I would like to ask all of the dentists that we have just recognized to please stand. So if all of you would please stand who we've recognized. So as Brian said, these people will be participating in the breakout sessions today and also in the panel discussion. So please, they're a resource for you to talk to them about how they've conducted studies and how it's gone successfully for them in their practice. So thank you all very much.
So those of you whose names were not called, you don't have to go stand in the corner. We thought we should recognize those who are doing exceptional jobs, and as Marilyn said, maybe worth talking to them to find out. We noticed that things work very, very smoothly in their offices, and if you know some of these people, you might want to ask them what the secrets are to making it work so well.